In a small town in the Midwest, life moved at a slow pace. Laura Bennett, a high school teacher with curly brown hair and a warm smile, spent her days explaining history to restless teenagers. Her younger brother, Jake, often waited for her after school, sketching pictures in his notebook while sitting on the steps outside. He was a quiet boy, always lost in thought, but his imagination made him special. Laura loved him deeply and tried to shield him from the worries of the world. One evening, as Laura drove home from work, she noticed something unusual in the sky. Bright lights flickered above the horizon, moving too steadily to be stars. At first, she thought it might be an airplane or a satellite, but these lights were different. They pulsed and shifted colors, almost like they were alive. She slowed down her car and stared, feeling a strange mix of curiosity and unease. By the time she reached home, the lights had disappeared, leaving only the usual blanket of darkness overhead. Still, the sight lingered in her mind. When she walked into the house, Jake greeted her with wide eyes. "Did you see them?" he asked excitedly. "The lights in the sky. I've never seen anything like that before." Laura nodded, trying to sound calm. "Yeah, I saw them too. Probably just some weird weather thing or maybe a meteor shower." But even as she said it, she wasn't sure she believed herself. Something about those lights felt unnatural. Over the next few hours, reports began flooding social media. People all over the world claimed to have seen similar phenomena. Bright, glowing objects hovering silently in the sky. Videos showed massive ships descending into Earth's atmosphere, their shapes sleek and alien. Governments scrambled to respond, issuing statements urging people to stay calm. But calm was the last thing anyone felt. Jake couldn't stop talking about it. "What if they're aliens?" he asked during dinner, his fork frozen midair. "Do you think they're friendly?" Laura forced a laugh, though her stomach churned with anxiety. "Let's not jump to conclusions. We don't know what's going on yet." But by morning, the truth became impossible to ignore. Every news channel broadcast the same message. Humanity was no longer alone. The visitors called themselves the Veilith, and they wasted no time making their intentions clear. Through a distorted voice transmitted across every device on the planet, they announced their arrival. "We are the Veilith." The voice boomed, cold and emotionless. "Your species is weak. Surrender now or face annihilation." Laura sat glued to the TV, her heart pounding. Images of towering insect-like creatures filled the screen. Their bodies gleamed with metallic armor, and their glowing eyes seemed to pierce through the camera lens. They looked both beautiful and terrifying. Jake clung to her arm, his earlier excitement replaced by fear. "They want to fight us," he whispered. "I don't know," Laura replied softly, pulling him closer. "But we'll figure this out, together." Outside, neighbors gathered in driveways, pointing up at the sky. Some cried, others shouted angrily, but most stood silent, overwhelmed by the enormity of what was happening. Laura stepped onto the porch, her arms wrapped tightly around Jake. Above them, the alien ships loomed larger than ever, casting long shadows over the town. For the first time in her life, Laura felt truly powerless. Yet somewhere deep inside, a spark of defiance ignited. Whatever came next, she knew one thing for certain. Humanity wouldn't go down without a fight. The days following the Veilith's announcement were chaotic. Across the globe, people reacted in different ways. Some panicked, rushing to grocery stores to stock up on supplies. Others took to the streets, demanding answers from their leaders. In Washington, D.C., President Daniel Hayes faced immense pressure as he tried to unite a fractured world. The situation was dire, and everyone knew it. General Samuel Carter stood at the front of the room during an emergency meeting with world leaders. His tall frame and gruff voice commanded attention. He wore his military uniform proudly, but his eyes betrayed the weight of the responsibility resting on his shoulders. Around the table, representatives from various nations argued about the best course of action. Some wanted to retaliate immediately, launching missiles at the alien ships. Others urged caution, suggesting diplomacy might still work. "We can't just roll over and give up," said a British official, slamming his fist on the table. "If we show weakness now, they'll crush us." Samuel raised a hand, silencing the room. "Attacking blindly won't solve anything," he said firmly. "These creatures are clearly advanced. If we provoke them without understanding their capabilities, we're signing our own death warrant." He turned to Dr. Emily Dawson, a linguist who had spent years studying extraterrestrial communication theories. She sat quietly, her glasses perched on her nose as she scribbled notes. "Dr. Dawson," Samuel continued, "do you think there's any chance we can talk to them? Maybe find out why they're here?" Emily hesitated before speaking. "It's possible," she admitted, "but it won't be easy. Their language is likely completely foreign to us. Still, if we can establish even basic communication, it might buy us time." President Hayes nodded thoughtfully. "Then that's what we'll do. We'll send a team to meet them, not soldiers, but scientists and diplomats. Let's show them we're not afraid to face them head-on." As plans unfolded, Laura watched the news from her living room. Jake sat beside her, clutching a stuffed animal tightly. The images on the screen showed preparations for the mission. Astronauts being briefed, spacecraft being loaded with equipment. It all felt surreal, like something out of a movie. "They're really going to try talking to them?" Jake asked, his voice trembling. "Yes," Laura replied, though she wasn't sure she believed it herself. "They have to try. Fighting isn't always the answer." Meanwhile, Captain Ryan Foster prepared for the journey. A decorated pilot known for his quick thinking, he had been chosen to lead the delegation. Though confident in his abilities, even he couldn't shake the unease creeping into his mind. What if the Valith refused to listen? What if they attacked on sight? On the day of departure, millions tuned in to watch the launch. The spacecraft soared into the sky, leaving a trail of fire behind it. Laura held her breath as she watched, silently praying for the crew's safety. Jake whispered, "I hope they come back." Hours later, the team arrived at the Valith mothership. The massive vessel loomed above them, its surface shimmering like liquid metal. As they docked, the air grew tense. When the hatch opened, the humans stepped inside, greeted by towering insectoid figures. Their exoskeletons glinted under dim lights, and their glowing eyes seemed to pierce through the group. King Sylar, the leader of the Valith, addressed them through a translator device. His voice was cold and mocking. "You dare approach us? Your species is weak. Why should we waste our time listening to you?" Dr. Dawson stepped forward, her hand steady despite her racing heart. "We're here because we believe peace is possible," she said calmly. "We want to understand each other." Sylar tilted his head, studying her with disdain. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, unexpectedly, he gestured for his guards to stand down. "Very well," he said. "Speak. But know this, if you waste our time, your planet will burn." Back on Earth, Laura waited anxiously for updates. She didn't realize how much hope she'd pinned on this mission until now. If diplomacy failed, war would follow, and the cost would be unimaginable. The meeting aboard the Valith mothership was unlike anything the human delegation had ever experienced. The air inside the ship felt heavy, almost suffocating, and a faint hum vibrated through the floor. Dr. Emily Dawson stood face to face with King Sylar, her heart pounding, but her expression calm. Captain Ryan Foster stood close by, his hand resting on the weapon at his side, ready for anything. Sylar's towering form loomed over them, his glowing eyes scanning the group with obvious disdain. His voice, distorted by the translator device, echoed coldly. "You claim to seek peace," he said, his tone dripping with mockery. "Yet your species has spent centuries destroying itself. What makes you think we should spare you?" Emily took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "We've made mistakes, yes," she admitted, "but we're capable of growth, of change. If you give us a chance, we can prove ourselves." For a long moment, Sylar didn't respond. He turned to his advisors, other Valeth who clicked and hissed softly in their own language. Finally, he spoke again. "Prove yourselves." He sneered. "How? By groveling? By offering worthless trinkets as tribute?" "No," Emily replied firmly. "By showing you that we value life, that we're more than just conquerors or cowards. We're builders, creators, dreamers." Siler's gaze lingered on her, and for a brief second, Emily thought she saw a flicker of curiosity in his glowing eyes. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Your words mean nothing," he said dismissively. "Actions are what matter. And so far, your actions have been weak." Ryan stepped forward then, his voice steady. "If you want to see strength, you'll find it. Humanity doesn't back down when threatened. We adapt, we fight, and we survive." Siler tilted his head, studying Ryan closely. "Fight," he repeated, almost amused. "Against us. You would be foolish to try." Before Ryan could respond, one of the Valeth guards moved suddenly, stepping between the humans and their leader. The tension in the room skyrocketed. Emily held her ground, refusing to show fear. "We didn't come here to fight," she said. "We came to talk, to understand. Isn't that worth something?" Siler paused, considering her words. Then, unexpectedly, he gestured for his guards to step back. "Very well," he said. "You may stay, for now. But know this. If you waste our time, your planet will burn." As the meeting ended, the human delegation was escorted to a holding area. It wasn't a cell, but it wasn't exactly welcoming either. The walls shimmered faintly, and the temperature was uncomfortably cool. Emily sank onto a bench, exhaling deeply. "That could have gone worse," she muttered. Ryan nodded, though his jaw remained clenched. "Yeah, but we're not out of the woods yet. They're testing us, seeing how far they can push before we crack." Meanwhile, back on Earth, Laura followed every update she could find. News outlets broadcast snippets of the meeting, analyzing every word exchanged between the humans and the Valeth. Jake sat beside her, glued to the screen. "Do you think they'll listen?" he asked quietly. "I hope so," Laura replied, though doubt lingered in her mind. She couldn't shake the image of Tyler's cold, glowing eyes. There was something about him, something ruthless, that made her uneasy. Hours passed, and the delegation continued their attempts to communicate. Emily worked tirelessly with the Valeth translators, trying to bridge the gap between their languages. Slowly, progress began to emerge. Words like peace and cooperation started to take shape, though their meanings seemed distorted to the Valeth. To them, peace was weakness, and cooperation was submission. One evening, as Emily reviewed notes with the team, she noticed something strange. A Valeth council member, an elder with intricate patterns etched into his exoskeleton, seemed hesitant during discussions. Unlike the others, he didn't sneer or mock the humans. Instead, he watched them intently, almost thoughtfully. Emily pointed this out to Ryan. "Maybe not all of them agree with Siler," she whispered. "If we can sway even one of them, it might make a difference." Ryan frowned. "Or it could get us killed. We need to tread carefully." Back on Earth, tensions mounted. Reports surfaced of smaller Valeth ships descending into the atmosphere, conducting reconnaissance missions over major cities. People huddled indoors, afraid to venture outside. Laura joined a local volunteer group, helping distribute food and supplies to those in need. Despite her efforts to stay strong, worry gnawed at her. What if diplomacy failed? What if war became inevitable? In the skies above, the Valeth fleet remained ominously still, watching and waiting. For now, humanity held its breath, clinging to the fragile hope that peace was still possible. But everyone knew the clock was ticking. The fragile hope that had briefly flickered aboard the Valeth mothership quickly faded as events on Earth took a darker turn. The alien ships began to move, descending closer to cities and military bases. At first, they seemed to be observing, scanning the planet with strange beams of light. But soon, their intentions became clear. They weren't just watching. They were testing humanity's defenses. One night, New York City was the first target. A massive beam of energy shot down from the sky, striking the heart of Manhattan. Skyscrapers crumbled like sandcastles, sending plumes of smoke and debris into the air. The streets filled with screams as people scrambled to escape. Laura watched the chaos unfold on the news, her hands trembling as she held Jake close. "It's happening," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "They're attacking." The attack spread rapidly, hitting London, Tokyo, and Sydney in quick succession. Each strike was precise, targeting landmarks and infrastructure. The message was clear. The Vailith wanted to show their power. Governments scrambled to respond, launching missiles and fighter jets at the alien ships. But the weapons seemed useless. The Vailith vessels shrugged off explosions as if they were nothing more than fireworks. In Chicago, where Laura lived, fear gripped the city. People packed into shelters or fled altogether, clogging highways and train stations. Laura debated leaving too, but something kept her rooted. Maybe it was the thought of abandoning her home, or maybe it was the stubborn belief that running wouldn't solve anything. Instead, she decided to stay and help however she could. She joined a growing group of volunteers organizing aid for those affected by the attacks. They turned an old warehouse into a makeshift shelter, filling it with food, water, and medical supplies. Jake stayed by her side, helping sort through donations and comfort frightened children. Despite his own fear, he tried to stay brave, mimicking Laura's determination. Meanwhile, General Samuel Carter worked tirelessly to devise a strategy. He knew conventional weapons wouldn't work against the Vailith, so he focused on unconventional tactics. One idea stood out: using Earth's vast network of satellites to disrupt the aliens' communications. It was risky and required perfect timing, but it might give humanity a fighting chance. Captain Ryan Foster returned from the Vailith mothership with grim news. Diplomacy had failed. Xylar dismissed their pleas for peace, calling them weak and unworthy. "He doesn't care about talking," Ryan told the president during a secure video call. "All he wants is domination." Determined not to let despair take hold, General Carter put his plan into motion. Teams of engineers and technicians worked around the clock to repurpose satellites into EMP, electromagnetic pulse devices. The goal was simple: disable the Vailith fleet systems long enough to regain the upper hand. As preparations continued, Laura and her group faced new challenges. Refugees poured into the shelter, many injured or traumatized. Supplies dwindled, and tensions rose among the volunteers. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, Laura stepped outside for some fresh air. The sky was eerily quiet, the usual hum of planes replaced by an unsettling stillness. Above, the Vailith ships hummed like dark clouds, casting long shadows over the city. Jake found her moments later, holding a cup of coffee someone had donated. "You okay?" he asked softly. Laura forced a smile. "I'm fine. Just thinking." "About what?" "About how we keep going," she said, "even when things feel impossible." Jake nodded, though his eyes betrayed his uncertainty. "Do you think we can win?" "I don't know," Laura admitted. "But I do know one thing. We can't give up. Not yet." Back at command headquarters, General Carter gave the order to launch the EMP attack. Satellites positioned themselves above key areas, ready to unleash their payload. The countdown began, each second feeling like an eternity. Everyone held their breath, praying this desperate gamble would pay off. When the EMPs activated, the results were immediate. Alien ships faltered, their lights dimming as their systems failed. Some plummeted from the sky, crashing harmlessly into uninhabited regions. Cheers erupted in control rooms around the world, but the celebration was short-lived. This was only a temporary victory. The Vailith would adapt, and when they did, humanity would need to be ready. For now, though, people allowed themselves a moment of relief. In Chicago, Laura heard the news while handing out blankets at the shelter. Tears streamed down her face as she hugged Jake tightly. "We did it," she whispered. "At least for today, we did it." But deep down, she knew the fight was far from over. The EMP attack gave humanity a brief but crucial advantage. The Valeth fleet was temporarily disabled, and their forces on Earth retreated to regroup. But everyone knew this was only a pause in the storm, not the end of it. King Sylar's pride wouldn't let him back down after such a blow. He would retaliate, and when he did, the consequences would be devastating. In the days that followed, General Samuel Carter shifted focus to guerrilla tactics. Conventional warfare had proven useless against the Valeth, so humanity needed to fight smarter, not harder. Resistance groups formed across the globe, made up of ordinary people determined to protect their homes. Farmers, teachers, mechanics, all pitched in, using whatever tools they could find to create makeshift weapons. Laura joined one such group in Chicago, training alongside others who had never held a weapon before. At first, Laura struggled with the idea of violence. She wasn't a soldier, she was a teacher. Her world revolved around books and classrooms, not guns and explosives. But as she trained, something changed inside her. She realized that fighting wasn't just about killing. It was about survival. It was about protecting Jake, her neighbors, and everything she loved. And so she learned how to aim, how to move quietly, and how to think like a warrior. Jake watched his sister transform with a mix of pride and fear. "You're really going to do this?" he asked one evening as they sat together in their small apartment. The walls were bare now, stripped of pictures and decorations to make room for supplies. "I have to," Laura replied, tying a bandage around her hand where a practice knife had cut her earlier. "If I don't, who will?" Jake nodded slowly, though his eyes glistened with tears. "Just promise me you'll be careful." Laura smiled softly and ruffled his hair. "I promise." Elsewhere, Captain Ryan Foster led daring aerial assaults against smaller Valeth vessels still stranded in orbit. Piloting a modified fighter jet equipped with EMP technology, he struck quickly and disappeared before the aliens could counterattack. Each mission was risky, but Ryan thrived under pressure. His success boosted morale among the resistance, proving that even an advanced enemy could be outsmarted. Despite these victories, the cost of war weighed heavily on everyone. Cities lay in ruins, and thousands had lost their lives. Families were torn apart, and survivors lived in constant fear. Yet amidst the devastation, stories of courage emerged. In Detroit, a group of teenagers used hack drones to spy on Valeth patrols. In Paris, artists painted murals of defiance on crumbling buildings, reminding people to keep hope alive. These small acts of bravery became symbols of humanity's resilience. General Carter monitored the situation closely, knowing the Valeth wouldn't stay silent for long. Intelligence reports suggested they were building new ships resistant to EMPs. Time was running out. During a strategy meeting, one of his advisors proposed a bold plan: capture a high-ranking Valeth leader. If they could take a hostage, it might force Sylar to negotiate, or at least hesitate before attacking again. The idea was risky, but Carter approved it. A team of volunteers, including Laura, set out to locate a potential target. They scoured abandoned areas near crash sites, searching for any sign of alien activity. Finally, they discovered a downed scout ship hidden in a forest outside Chicago. Inside, they found something extraordinary: a young Valeth, injured and unconscious. Its exoskeleton shimmered faintly, and its breathing was shallow but steady. Laura stared at the creature, her heart racing. This was no ordinary soldier. It was a member of the royal family, identified by markings etched into its armor. Prince Sinar, the son of King Xylar himself. The implications were staggering. If they could bring him back alive, it might change everything. But capturing him wouldn't be easy. The prince was guarded by a handful of Valeth warriors, and reinforcements were likely on the way. Laura and her team prepared carefully, setting traps and planning their approach. As they moved in, adrenaline coursed through her veins. For the first time, she felt truly powerful, not because of the gun in her hands, but because of the purpose driving her forward. When the moment came, chaos erupted. Blasts of energy lit up the forest as humans clashed with aliens. Laura fought with a fierceness she didn't know she possessed, her every move focused on reaching Zinar. When the dust settled, the team emerged victorious, dragging the unconscious prince toward their vehicle. Back at headquarters, scientists worked tirelessly to study Zinar, hoping to uncover weaknesses in the Vailith biology. Meanwhile, Laura volunteered to guard him, feeling conflicted about holding someone so young, even if he belonged to the enemy. As she watched him lie motionless, she couldn't help but wonder, was he just a pawn in his father's game? Or was there more to him than met the eye? For now, the prince remained a prisoner, but his capture marked a turning point in the war. Humanity had struck a blow against the invaders, and shown they weren't afraid to fight dirty. Prince Zinar's capture sent shockwaves through both sides of the conflict. For humanity, it was a glimmer of hope, a chance to turn the tide in their favor. For the Vailith, it was an insult they couldn't ignore. King Sylar roared with fury when he learned his son had been taken, vowing to destroy Earth entirely. But for now, the humans held the upper hand. Back at the Resistance headquarters, scientists worked around the clock to study Zinar. The young prince was kept in a secure chamber, his injuries treated just enough to keep him alive. Laura watched him closely, her feelings torn between anger and pity. He looked so different from the towering warriors she'd seen on the news, smaller, almost fragile. His exoskeleton shimmered faintly, even in the dim light, and his breathing remained slow and steady. Dr. Emily Dawson led the research team, her sharp eyes scanning every inch of Zinar's body. She noticed small cracks in his armor-like skin, revealing soft tissue beneath. "This could be key," she muttered, pointing to the damaged areas. "If we can exploit these weak points, we might have a way to hurt them." General Samuel Carter listened intently, nodding as Emily explained her findings. "We need something we can use against their ships too," he said, "not just their soldiers." Emily nodded. "I'm working on it. But first, we need to understand more about their biology. Every piece of information helps." While the scientists worked, Laura took shifts guarding Zinar. She didn't trust herself with weapons, so she carried only a flashlight and a taser. Most of the time, she simply sat outside his chamber, watching through the glass. Occasionally, Zinar stirred, his glowing eyes flickering open briefly before closing again. Once, he tried to speak, but the words came out as clicks and hisses, impossible for Laura to understand. One night, as Laura sat alone, Jake joined her. He brought 2 cups of tea, handing one to her silently. "You've been here a lot," he said softly. "Do you think he knows what's happening?" Laura shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe he's just scared like anyone would be." Jake frowned, staring at the unconscious alien. "Do you feel bad for him?" "I don't know," Laura admitted. "He's one of them. They attacked us, hurt so many people. But he's also just a kid." Jake didn't respond, but his silence spoke volumes. They both knew the war wasn't black and white. Even as humanity fought for survival, difficult questions lingered. Was it right to use Zinar as leverage? Could they justify harming someone who might not have chosen this path? Days passed, and Emily made a breakthrough. By studying Zinar's physiology, she discovered that the Vailith were highly sensitive to electromagnetic pulses, EMPs. Their exoskeletons acted as conductors, amplifying the effects of EMPs and disabling their nervous systems. It was a weakness humanity could exploit, not just against individual aliens, but against their entire fleet. General Carter wasted no time putting the discovery into action. He devised Operation Eclipse, a coordinated assault designed to disable the remaining Vailith ships using upgraded EMP weapons. Resistance fighters trained tirelessly, preparing for the mission ahead. Laura volunteered to join, despite Jake's protests. "You'll get hurt," he cried during one heated argument. "Why do you have to go?" "Because I can help," Laura replied firmly, "and because sitting here isn't going to stop them." The day of the operation arrived, and tension filled the air. Teams gathered in makeshift command centers, checking equipment and reviewing plans. Captain Ryan Foster briefed the group, his voice calm but commanding. "This is our best shot," he said. "Stick together, stay sharp, and remember why we're doing this." As the teams launched their attack, EMP devices lit up the sky, sending waves of energy crashing into the alien fleet. One by one, the massive ships faltered, their lights dimming as their systems failed. Cheers erupted among the resistance fighters, but the celebration was short-lived. Everyone knew the Valith wouldn't surrender easily. King Sylar, enraged by the loss of his ships, vowed revenge. "You will regret taking my son," he broadcast across Earth, his voice colder than ever. "Your defiance ends now." Despite the looming threat, Laura felt a spark of pride. Humanity had struck back and shown they weren't afraid to fight. But deep down, she knew the hardest battles were still to come. The success of Operation Eclipse gave humanity a much-needed boost, but everyone knew it wasn't enough to end the war. The Valith might have been weakened, but they were far from defeated. King Sylar's threats echoed in every corner of the globe, a chilling reminder that the aliens wouldn't stop until Earth was theirs, or destroyed. General Samuel Carter gathered his advisors for an emergency meeting. The room buzzed with tension as maps and data filled the screens on the walls. "We've hit them hard," Carter said, pacing back and forth. "But we can't keep playing defense. If we want to win this war, we need to take the fight to them." Captain Ryan Foster leaned forward, his expression grim. "You're talking about invading their homeworld." Carter nodded. "Exactly. We capture Sylar, and we break their will to fight. Without their king, the Valith Empire falls apart." The idea was bold. Some might say insane, but no one argued against it. Humanity had nothing left to lose. Using stolen Valith technology, engineers worked tirelessly to modify a captured scout ship. It would be small enough to slip past enemy defenses, but powerful enough to carry a strike team deep into alien territory. Laura volunteered immediately, surprising even herself. "You don't have to do this," Jake pleaded when she told him. His voice cracked with emotion. "You've already done so much." "I'm not doing it because I have to," Laura replied, kneeling to meet his gaze. "I'm doing it because it's the only way to protect you and everyone else. If we don't stop them now, there won't be a future for any of us." Jake hugged her tightly, tears streaming down his face. "Just come back," he whispered. "Promise me." Laura kissed the top of his head. "I promise." The mission required absolute secrecy. The team, led by Captain Foster and including Laura, Dr. Emily Dawson, and a handful of elite fighters, trained relentlessly. They studied everything they could about the Valith homeworld, piecing together information from Zinar's memories and intercepted transmissions. The planet was heavily fortified, with armies of warriors guarding its surface and skies patrolled by countless ships. On the day of departure, the team boarded the modified scout ship, their hearts pounding with anticipation. As the vessel launched into space, Laura stared out the window at Earth growing smaller behind them. For the first time, she truly understood how fragile their world was, a tiny blue dot surrounded by endless darkness. The journey to the Valith homeworld took days, each moment filled with tension. When they finally arrived, the sight was breathtaking. The planet shimmered like molten gold, its surface covered in towering spires and sprawling cities. But beauty masked danger. The air crackled with energy, and patrols of Valith ships circled endlessly. Using stealth technology, the humans managed to land undetected on the outskirts of the capital city. The team moved quickly, sticking to shadows and avoiding detection. Their target was clear: King Sylar's palace, a massive structure rising above the landscape like a fortress. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Guards marched through halls lined with glowing crystals, their weapons ready. Laura stayed close to Ryan, her breath shallow as they navigated the labyrinthine corridors. Every step felt like walking on thin ice. Finally, they reached the throne room. Xylar sat atop a dais, his exoskeleton gleaming under harsh lights. He seemed larger than ever, his presence commanding and terrifying. "How dare you set foot here?" he snarled as the team burst in, raising his weapon. Ryan fired an EMP device, sending a pulse of energy through the room. The guards collapsed, their systems overwhelmed. Xylar staggered but didn't fall. With a roar, he charged at the humans, his movements swift and deadly. Laura stepped forward, gripping a taser in her hand. She hesitated for a split second, then lunged at the king. Her aim was true, the electric shock stunning him long enough for Ryan to subdue him. Together, they bound his limbs with restraints designed to block his strength. As Xylar struggled against his captors, his glowing eyes burned with hatred. "You think this changes anything?" he spat. "My people will never surrender." "We'll see about that," Ryan replied coldly. With their prize secured, the team made their escape. Outside, alarms blared as Violet reinforcements closed in. The journey back to Earth would be perilous, but Laura allowed herself a small smile. They had done the impossible. They had captured the king. And maybe, just maybe, they had turned the tide of the war. The journey back to Earth was anything but smooth. As the team raced toward their ship, alarms blared across the Violet homeworld, alerting every warrior in the vicinity to their presence. King Xylar, bound and furious, thrashed against his restraints, his glowing eyes burning with rage. "You cannot escape," he snarled, his voice distorted by anger. "My people will hunt you down." Captain Ryan Foster ignored the threats, focusing instead on keeping the group alive. "Move faster," he shouted, urging everyone forward as they dodged laser fire from pursuing Valeth soldiers. The air crackled with energy, and explosions erupted behind them, shaking the ground. Laura stayed close to Ryan, her heart pounding as she clutched a stolen alien weapon. She had never imagined herself in a situation like this, fighting for survival light years away from home. But there was no time to dwell on fear. Every step mattered, every second counted. When they finally reached the scout ship, Emily and another fighter climbed aboard first, starting the engines while the rest of the team held off the enemy. Laura fired blindly into the chaos, her hands trembling but steady enough to keep the aliens at bay. One by one, the team scrambled inside, dragging Xylar with them. As soon as the hatch sealed shut, Ryan took the controls, launching the ship into the sky. The Valeth didn't give up easily. Dozens of ships pursued them, firing relentlessly. The small scout ship rocked violently as blasts hit its shields, pushing it to the brink of collapse. Inside, the humans braced themselves, clinging to whatever they could find. Laura knelt beside Jake's picture, which she had tucked into her pocket before leaving Earth. "Hold on," she whispered, though she wasn't sure if she was talking to herself or him. Ryan's hands moved quickly over the controls, weaving through the enemy fleet with precision. Just when it seemed like they wouldn't make it, Emily activated the ship's cloaking device, a piece of stolen technology they had hoped would work. The screen flickered, and suddenly, the pursuing ships lost track of them. Silence fell over the cabin as the team caught their breath. Back on Earth, news of their success spread like wildfire. The captured king became a symbol of hope, proof that humanity could stand up to even the most powerful enemies. When the ship landed, crowds gathered around the base, cheering wildly. Soldiers escorted Xylar out, his towering form reduced to stumbling steps as he was dragged through the dirt. His once proud demeanor was gone, replaced by shame and fury. General Samuel Carter wasted no time making an example of Xylar. To send a clear message to the remaining Valeth forces, he ordered the king paraded through the streets of devastated cities. Chains bound his limbs, and a vehicle towed him along rough roads, forcing him to endure the jeers and shouts of angry survivors. It was a brutal act, one that sparked debate among world leaders, but no one could deny its impact. Laura watched the procession on a screen, her feelings mixed. On one hand, she felt a surge of pride, knowing they had struck a blow against the invaders. On the other, seeing Sylar humiliated stirred something uncomfortable within her. Was this justice or revenge? Jake sat beside her, his face pale. "Is it over?" he asked quietly. "I don't know," Laura admitted. "But we've shown them we're not afraid anymore." Meanwhile, the Valeth fleet began to retreat. Without their king to lead them, their resolve crumbled. Ships pulled back from Earth's orbit, disappearing into the vastness of space. For the first time in months, the skies above the planet were clear. Though the immediate threat had passed, the scars of war remained. Cities lay in ruins, and millions mourned loved ones lost. But amidst the devastation, a sense of unity emerged. People came together to rebuild, driven by the belief that they had faced the impossible and survived. For Laura, the fight wasn't just about winning. It was about proving that humanity's strength came not from weapons or technology, but from the courage to stand together. As she looked at Jake, she felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could build a better future, one worth fighting for. Months passed since the Valeth retreat, and Earth began the slow, painful process of healing. The scars of war were everywhere: shattered buildings, empty streets, and families torn apart. But amidst the ruins, life slowly returned. People rebuilt homes, planted gardens, and tried to piece together what had been lost. Laura watched it all unfold with a mix of sadness and determination. She knew the road ahead would be long, but she also saw glimmers of hope. Jake had changed too. The quiet boy who once clung to his sister's side now helped neighbors clear debris and distribute supplies. He still carried fear in his eyes, but there was something new, a quiet strength that made Laura proud. "You've grown up so much," she told him one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset. "I guess we all have," Jake replied softly, leaning against her shoulder. In Washington, D.C., General Samuel Carter reflected on the war from his office. The weight of leadership had aged him, but he felt a deep sense of pride in what humanity had achieved. Capturing King Sylar wasn't just a tactical victory. It was proof that even the smallest acts of courage could change the course of history. Still, he knew the cost had been high. Millions had died, and countless others bore wounds that might never heal. Captain Ryan Foster chose a quieter life after the war ended. Though hailed as a hero, he avoided the spotlight, preferring simple days spent fishing near his childhood home. His wife and daughter welcomed him back with open arms, grateful to have him safe. But at night, when the house grew silent, Ryan often stared at the stars, wondering if the Valeth would ever return. He hoped not, but he stayed ready, just in case. Dr. Emily Dawson continued her work, studying Xenar and the data collected during the mission. The young prince remained in custody, though his condition improved under careful supervision. Over time, Emily noticed subtle changes in him. He began mimicking human expressions, tilting his head curiously when spoken to. Once, he even attempted to communicate using gestures. It was slow progress, but Emily believed it meant something important. Perhaps not all Valeth were beyond understanding. Laura returned to teaching, eager to help her students make sense of the world after such chaos. Her classroom became a place of reflection, where children shared stories of survival and dreams for the future. One day, she brought in a small plant she nurtured from a seed found in the rubble. "This is what we are," she told them, holding it up. "Even when everything seems broken, we find a way to grow again." News outlets covered the rebuilding efforts daily, showcasing communities coming together. In New York City, volunteers restored Central Park, planting trees and cleaning pathways. In Tokyo, artists painted murals over cracked walls, turning destruction into beauty. Each act reminded people that while the past couldn't be erased, the future could still be shaped. But not everyone moved forward easily. Some struggled with guilt or grief, unable to shake the memories of what they'd seen. Laura understood this better than most. She often found herself staring at the sky, wondering about the lives lost and those saved. Had they done the right thing? Could peace truly last? One evening, President Daniel Hayes addressed the nation. Standing before cameras, he spoke of resilience and unity. "We faced an enemy stronger than us," he said, his voice steady. "But we showed them our true strength doesn't come from weapons or armies. It comes from the bonds we share, the love we have for each other and for this planet." His words resonated deeply, inspiring millions to keep going despite the challenges ahead. Laura listened from her living room, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could build something better. As the months turned into years, Earth transformed. Cities rose anew, greener and more resilient. Schools taught lessons about unity and innovation, ensuring the next generation wouldn't repeat the mistakes of the past. And every night, when people looked up at the stars, they did so not with fear, but with hope. If another threat emerged, they knew they'd face it together. Years after the Violet War, Earth had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The scars of battle still lingered. Abandoned buildings and overgrown streets served as reminders of what humanity had endured, but life found a way to flourish again. People worked together, not out of necessity this time, but because they had learned how much stronger they were united. Laura stood in her classroom, now filled with bright posters and eager students. Her hair was streaked with gray, but her smile remained warm and encouraging. She often told her students stories about the war, not to scare them, but to teach them about courage and resilience. "We didn't win because we were the strongest," she would say, holding up a small potted plant she kept on her desk. "We won because we refused to give up." Jake visited whenever he could, though his life had taken him far from their hometown. He became an engineer, designing sustainable technologies to help rebuild cities. His projects focused on creating energy-efficient homes and clean water systems for communities still recovering. Though proud of his work, he never forgot where he came from, or the sacrifices that made his future possible. General Samuel Carter retired quietly, spending his days tending to a small farm outside the city. He grew vegetables and raised chickens, finding peace in the simplicity of nature. Occasionally, reporters visited, asking for interviews or insights into the war. Carter always declined, preferring to let others tell the story. "It wasn't just my fight," he'd say with a shrug. "It was everyone's." Captain Ryan Foster lived a modest life near a lake, teaching young pilots how to fly. He rarely spoke about his role in capturing King Xylar, though his students admired him all the same. At night, he sat by the water, watching the stars reflect on its surface. Sometimes, he thought about the Valeth and wondered if they too were looking at the same sky. Would they ever return? He didn't know, but he hoped humanity would be ready if they did. Dr. Emily Dawson continued studying Xanar, who had become surprisingly cooperative over time. The young prince adapted to his surroundings, learning bits of human language and showing interest in Earth's culture. Emily believed he held the key to preventing future conflicts, not through force, but through understanding. One day, she hoped to release him back to his people, carrying a message of peace. The world itself grew wiser from the experience. Governments formed alliances stronger than before, vowing to protect each other rather than compete. Advances in technology prioritized sustainability, ensuring Earth's resources wouldn't be wasted like they had been in the past. Schools taught lessons about cooperation and empathy, preparing children for a brighter future. On clear nights, Laura took Jake and his niece, a bubbly girl named Mia, to the park. They lay on blankets, pointing out constellations and imagining what might exist beyond the stars. "Do you think there are more aliens out there?" Maya asked once, her eyes wide with wonder. "Maybe," Laura replied, smiling softly. "But if they come, we'll face them the way we faced the Valeth, together." Her words carried weight, not just for Mia, but for everyone listening. Humanity had proven it could rise above fear and division. They had stared into the abyss and chosen hope instead of despair. It wasn't perfect. There were still challenges, disagreements, and moments of doubt, but they had grown stronger because of it. As the years passed, fewer people remembered the war firsthand, but its legacy lived on. In the rebuilt cities, in the stories shared between generations, and in the determination to never take peace for granted. When new threats arose, whether natural disasters or technological challenges, humanity tackled them with the same spirit that had defeated the Valeth. One evening, as Laura tucked Mia into bed, the little girl hugged her tightly. "I'm glad you were brave," she whispered sleepily. Laura kissed her forehead, feeling a lump rise in her throat. "So am I, sweetheart. So am I." Outside, the stars twinkled brightly against the dark sky. Somewhere among them, distant worlds spun silently, unaware of the fragile blue planet orbiting its sun. Earth wasn't perfect, but it was home, and humanity had fought hard to keep it that way. Whatever came next, they knew one thing for certain: they would face it together.